Hello, everybody. It is Friday. Bring on the weekend. I am ready. It has been a long week. I'm just going to be straightforward. It is always good to have you with us. So, wherever you are in the world, say hello in the chat. Let us know where you're at and what you're up to, what you're researching. We would love to have you join us as much as possible through the chat and the dialogue that goes on there. So please don't be shy. Chime in from wherever you are in the world. So a couple of you already saying hello. Thank you very much. Lynn in BC, British Columbia, I am assuming. So always good to have our Canadian friends with us. Daphne is with us as well from sunny Somerset. Sally is here, and she mentions it has been a while. It has. I actually was out of town last month for my usual rotation on Friday. So I got skipped last month. Which I was driving. Actually, we were on a bit of a little road trip going to Kansas for a competition for my daughter. So it was a nice weekend though. Janet's with us from North Wales. Jillian's here from Edinburgh. Sue is with us from Guildford. Ingrid, yeah, you're right. It was a 4-day week in England, wasn't it? Yeah, I forget about the bank holiday sometimes. Although I will admit, I get a lot done on those days. There's not a lot of people working in the whole Find My Past team. Let's see. Sean's here from New Zealand. Thank you for being with us, Sean. That's great. Georgia is in Essex. Oh, Daphne, thank you very much for the compliment on my top. This is just a fun one, and it makes me cheerful. It feels very spring-like, so I like it. Linda from Scotland. Congratulations to your clever twirling daughter from me. I will let her know. Yeah, she's so for those of you who have not heard me talk about my daughter before, which is probably not very many of you, she is a competitive baton twirler. And she does very well, actually. She's quite good at it. She quite loves it a lot. So we spend a lot of time at contests and practicing and talking about sparkly leotards and things, which things I never really thought I'd get into as a parent, but here I am. But it also was the inspiration for this week's question of the week, actually. So we'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. Anya's with us. Sally's here. Peter is in Sandhurst. Yeah, so some of you are telling us about the weather. I love that. That's good. It is actually gorgeous in Colorado today. Beautiful blue skies. And we actually had what I call a very English week of weather. It was very cloudy and rainy and kind of just damp. And there was some fog one morning. And we don't get weather like that very often in Colorado, where I'm at. So that was actually lovely. And as we go into the spring and the summer with the fire danger getting very high, and it's been quite dry here this winter, it's really, really nice to have some precipitation. So I was really excited about that. All right. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jen Baldwin. I am the research specialist and North American content manager for Findmypast. It's been a good week for me, although a long one. Last week, I celebrated my 8th anniversary with the company. I cannot believe I've been doing this international commute, if you will, for 8 years. But it's been a great 8 years, and I'm really excited for what the future holds. So, and this is a big part of that. I love doing these, and I love that we added these in the last couple of years. Ellie is in the comments with us, so please say hi to Ellie. Pretty sure it's Ellie today, actually. She said she was going to be here, so I assume it's her. But if you want to say hello to the team, please do leave a comment for them in the thread as well. All right, we have a lot to talk about today in our usual hour. It always goes by so quickly, but let me flash up the question of the week so that you guys can start thinking about that. And it's here. So the question this week is, how do you practice your family history skills? I think this is something that we actually don't talk about very much as a community. And like I said, kind of inspired by my daughter's efforts this last couple of weeks. So this is a good thing to think about. How do you practice your family history skills? And I want to encourage you to kind of think through that and tell us about your experiences, but also think about what you might do in the future, right? Um, to be more intentional in that direction. Um, okay, so um, let's see. So, and oh, and please don't forget to to put your responses to the question of the week with a little QOTW in the front so we know that you're answering the question of the week. All right, so this week's records. We always like to start with our new records on Friday mornings. Well, Friday morning, my time, Friday afternoon for many of you. So, what are our new records today? We have historic photos of England and Wales. This is a fun one, actually. It's a very small collection and actually sourced from two institutions in the United States, believe it or not. But they are some really cool images in there. I found one yesterday of a polishing department working through a glass like manufacturing or porcelain manufacturing. It's a in Sheffield, early 1920s, and it's just this wonderful row of women sitting and working at this long bench with all these pieces of cutlery in front of them. Other pictures include things like, major locations, right? Like George Washington's traditional family parish, countryside views, kind of England and Wales. Again, a relatively small collection, but always good to have kind of that visual representation, especially for areas maybe in the world that you've never traveled to before. These are free to access on Find My Past, so available to anybody and everybody. They actually very much complement the set that we published back for St. Patrick's Day, the Views of Ireland. Very similar collection. The um, the material, sorry, is mostly black and white. But when you open up each of the images, you'll see little notations on around the edge of the image on most of them. So some really cool early photography for England and Wales. Really neat material to work through. The other thing that we published this week that is much more significant in size, 8,500 new records from Halifax schools added to our national school admission registers and logbooks collection. So if you enjoy school records, this is a great week for you. We added materials from 1884 to 1921, so it kind of expands that collection a little bit from a year range standpoint. And we have added material from the following four schools. So Portland Road, the infant school from records from 1890 to 1904, Queens Road Boys Senior School in Halifax, and that is 1904 to 1921. The Queens Road Girls Senior School in Halifax, 1884 to 1921, and then the Queens Road Junior School in Halifax, 1896 to 1903. So a couple of different age groups there and a little bit of variation in the year span of what they're covered. But these are done in cooperation with the local Family History Society. It's an index set. It's not original images, but they're wonderful in terms of information. So I pulled up an example yesterday, just kind of randomly in the collection for a young lady named Sabina Blackburn. She's 7 years old when she's registered in the school in 1919. She is attending the Girls Senior School on Queens Road in Yorkshire, Halifax, Yorkshire. And it includes her parents' name, her residence or her address at 16 Lutton Street, her admission number, the reason she left, the archive that the material is indexed from. So you could go back to that source, back to the archive and try and find the original records, see if you can get copies of those. So just a really helpful research tool to get you um, into some of those records. And Bev just asked, is that Halifax in the UK or Canada? It is in the UK. This is Halifax in Yorkshire, in England, is where these records are from. Right. So some really good records added into the school collection this week. We're excited to continue to add to this particular collection. It's such a rich set of material, and one of the things that I like about it is that it now stretches a little bit closer to that all important 1921 census. So now you can go back and you can find this household, you can find Sabina and her parents and her family, because you have not just her name information, but you also have an address through these school records. You can go correlate that with 1921 and see if they're still there, and all sorts of little fill in the details type research that we all love, right? Um, so really good set to add in. So if you have any research in that area of Halifax, you'll want to pop in and take a look this weekend. Okay, so that's new records. Let me take that off the screen. There we go. Look at us getting fancy. I'm gonna scroll through the comments really quick and just make sure. Let's see. Oh, a couple people saying hi to Ellie. That's lovely. A few responses to the question of the week. So we'll get to those in just a few minutes. Yeah, it looks like some good responses, actually, some long ones that I'm going to have to read through. So that's good. Fantastic. Yeah. All right. It looks like there's some really good suggestions coming through on how to practice your family history skills. So that's really good. That's exciting. All right. One of the other things I wanted to make sure that you guys are aware of before we dive into our question of the week actually is a campaign that we're doing in partnership with Savu and Mental Health Awareness Week. I'm going to pop this up on the screen so you guys can see it. It is posted on our Facebook page, and it's also just directly in the Savu website. I don't know that I'm pronouncing that correctly, so I hope I am. Um, but between the 2nd and the 15th of May, we are working together to raise awareness of the Mental Health Awareness Week. And we're partnering with the Mental Health Foundation, which hosts that annual event. So if you want to make a donation, you can actually do that by purchasing a Find My Past subscription if you don't already have one. So you would get an exclusive 15% off your subscription, and then Savu will actually donate 10% of their retail revenue to the Mental Health Foundation. So if you already have a subscription, um, share this with your friends and your family history community and whoever else you feel like might want a subscription. This is a great opportunity to get a Find My Past subscription at a discounted rate, but also to contribute to a really, really good cause. So I see Ellie just posted the link in the chat. So thank you for that, Ellie. And you'll see again kind of our logo on the page. You'll know you're in the right spot. And the easiest way is to go through that Savu link and push that orange button at the bottom there. That will feed directly into the Find My Past website with the right discount code attached and all of that. So this is good from the 9th to the 15th. So you have several more days to do this and to share and to let your friends know that we're doing this thing to help raise money for the Mental Health Foundation. So hopefully we'll get some good fundraising out there. The Mental Health Foundation is important to us for a couple of reasons. We all know it's been a pretty difficult couple of years. And we talk a lot about how positive family history can be for our mental health. So this year's theme particularly hit us because this year's theme is loneliness. And that's something I think we've all had to work through quite a bit over the last couple of years. We've all had a taste of that loneliness when we're pulled away from our routine, our regular world. And this community in particular, the Find My Past community, has really pulled together and helped each other through the very difficult years of the pandemic. We've been here for each other in many, many ways. Just even these sessions, right? I mean, they're really healthy for us as the host. They're hopefully helpful to all of you. I know that we've had some friendships that have developed through these sessions. We've definitely had a lot of research help happening in the background across the community. So loneliness is a big issue, and loneliness is something that we've all helped each other with. So now we're kind of hoping to return the favor a little bit and pay that back a bit and be able to help others in their pursuit of kind of ending their loneliness and finding solutions to that. So loneliness is a big problem. And certainly within the community of retirees and pensioners and people living kind of in an isolated environment, especially during the pandemic, it's been very difficult. So very much an issue, very much a piece of our mental health that we need to be thinking about and talking about, making sure that we're working together, making sure that we're reaching out to our friends and our colleagues and being there for each other. And this is just one way in which we can give back. So we're really pleased to be partnering with the Mental Health Foundation and helping them out a little bit this week. So if you can, give it a little love, and we'll thank you for it, deeply and meaningfully. Thank you for it. All right. That is my that's my mental health pitch. It's such an important topic, and I just think it needs to be said, right? It just needs to be talked about and said that loneliness is part of our mental health, and it's important that we take care of each other. Okay, so that leads us to the question of the week, which I will put back on the screen, and then I'll go back to comments. So we'll leave that sitting there for a bit. Um, Actually, hang on. I want to share this comment from Anya first. Sorry, I got distracted. But ooh, not this one, this one. There we go. She says, I've made a new group of amazing friends through family history, including one of my best friends, Linda, who I met through here, which is exactly what we're talking about, right? This community has been so incredible for each other. And thank you for sharing this with us. This is special. Um, so this is really what it's all about, right? Family history is exciting, but we don't do it in a silo. We don't do it in isolation, and this is important, right? So thank you very much for that, Anya. That's great. That's exactly what we're talking about today. All right. So how do you practice your family history skills? That is today's question. And Philip put in a comment saying, it's with an S and not a C. I'm American, so I spell it with a C. Um, all right, so let's go up to your comments. This is as I scroll through, I'm going to tell you a little bit of how all this started, right? So I actually am doing a webinar tomorrow for a group about Irish research. And we all know Irish research is kind of notoriously difficult, right? And one of the messages I wanted to get across is that we continue to have to learn, right? We have to for every moment of research we do, we need a moment dedicated to our own education. And it occurred to me as I was kind of prepping my slides that family history websites across the industry are all really different. And to get good at something, you have to practice it, right? I tell my daughter that all the time. I started this by talking about her a little bit in her competitions. She practices really hard to perfect her skills. And that's what we have to do as well, right? Whether we're talking about how to best use a family history tool like Findmypast, or if we're talking about how to take good notes, or making good citations quickly and efficiently. We have to practice those skills. So that kind of that's kind of how I got to today's question of the week, was just this idea that practice has been at the top of my mind, um, for a couple of weeks now with my daughter. But I don't know that I have ever really intentionally said I'm going to sit down and practice my family history skills today. I think it's a part of what we do, but I'm saying let's make it more intentional, right? Let's be really really focused and actually give ourselves the time we deserve to put these skills to the test a bit, right? Okay, so with that now, a few of your comments and suggestions. Daphne starts us off looking at Find My Past how-to videos. However, they're far too simplistic and prescriptive and doesn't allow for anomalies like no results. So one day I'll get the hang of it. You know what? That's Daphne, that's a suggestion for us too. Maybe we'll make note of that and try and figure out a way to develop a video on that as well. A lot of that you'll start to see through these Friday sessions. We're adding that kind of back to basics element that we're all including in our Friday sessions. So we'll get through kind of those, um, just the basics of the website functionality, but also it getting into the more advanced features and really making sure that people know how fluently to use the site. But yeah, you're right. Watching the videos is always a good place to start. Um, who's next? Anya, working with friends with their family history. Always a good one, right? Taking some random tree that you don't know anything about and you're not related to, and kind of putting your skills against that. Um, She says, having taken the first year of the Trinity College family history course, I was able to tell a friend a little bit more about her family in Northern Ireland from looking at the 1901 1911 census. Great. So you're taking education and then applying it to your friend's tree, which is excellent. And it sounds like you're doing research in an area that you're not as familiar with which I think is another element of this kind of intentional education. Um, and practice that we all need to be doing. Kim says, and I'm not pre-reading these because some of them are kind of long. Reading up on notes, relatives regaling stories, and revisiting records. Well, you've got a lot of R's there. That was a little bit tricky to say. Looking at some new additions to the newspapers, I was able to find a few more reports on my granddad's boxing career. Yeah, perfect. So going back to research you've already done, perhaps. Um, Looks like you're staying on top of newspapers that are released, new newspaper content that's released. And of course, we do that on a pretty consistent basis as well. I didn't actually mention all the newspapers we published this week. There are a lot of them. So newspapers it's a big release this week. I'll try to pull that up while I'm chatting because I forgot to put it in my notes. But yeah, absolutely going back to some of those same resources and looking for that same person kind of over and over again. So Jillian says she practices with a few of her neighbors. They've always wanted to know about their ancestors and wasn't sure how to get started. Go over the basics with them and give them some websites to find records. Going through old family photos can help jog some memories. Yeah, absolutely. That's perfect. Sally, there we go. I look at records that might be something to do with my ancestors, go and talk to my dad, and he more than often says, "Oh, yeah, I remember that, them, or that story." I think my dad knows all the answers to our tree, but selectively remembers in drip feeds. Yeah. You know what? I feel like my dad's the same way sometimes, Sally. Maybe our dads should get together and have a good chat over how to share information. Because sometimes I'm like, why didn't you tell me that, a decade ago? um, it would have been really helpful. Okay, Janet. This is a good one. I like this, Janet. She says, I'm a newsletter editor for a small heritage transport society and have been researching employees of the tramway company. So good practice, right? Because again, you're looking at someone who's not related to you at all, probably. And then working through the basics, those kind of foundational, how do you start a new project type of thing. I do that basically every day now, and it's a good reminder that, like, I need to knock these 5 to 10 essentials off the list every time I start a new tree. And that's really good. Just to kind of reset yourself on that entry level, I just started a project kind of um, mindset, right? Ellie tells us, thank you, Ellie. I like brushing up on my family history skills by taking a step away from my tree and working on someone else's. So there's a recurring theme here, right? Like everybody's kind of mirrored kind of the same idea, is like actually just walking away from your own family for a minute and working on something else. Jackie just finished preparing a slide presentation for our local family history group. So making sure that the facts are correct by double checking everything, a good way to practice the skills. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a, a good example as well. Like going back and just rechecking yourself and like, did I get that right? Did I analyze that right? And especially work that you did 5 years ago or 10 years ago, right? We get a little smarter every day. And so you go back and you go, what did I miss from that document? What did did I interpret this correctly? Do I have the dates right? Is it one of those areas in time where the calendar changes and maybe I didn't know about that back then when I first got a hold of this and I need to adjust? Okay, Fiona says, I've recently been concentrating on my ancestors who left Scotland for Canada. The US and the newspapers are great. I found obituaries, marriages, and even a 3 times great uncle I didn't know where he went to in the late 1800s, but track him down to San Francisco on his own. San Francisco, late 1800s, he is there to take advantage of that gold rush and those miners. There's no doubt in my mind he is making good money depending on what kind of industry he's in. Mhm. Love me some gold rush era period. Okay, let's see. Oh, Karen's birthday today. Yes, let's not forget. Karen did a wonderful session with Ellie on Wednesday about her organization and the Family History Society of London, Westminster, and Middlesex. I don't know if I got that exactly right, but in that neighborhood. And we want to wish Karen a happy birthday, very much so. So um, that's really brilliant. Thanks for reminding me, everybody. Okay, let's see. Here's another question of the week from Ingrid. Apart from using the website, I've also joined Facebook history pages for places where I knew my ancestors lived. Recently, I found the history and even a picture of the inn where my great great grandfather and my great 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 grandparents were the fit you fit, um, supplied things. It's definitely Friday morning. Oh yeah, it's Friday for sure. Andrew says he's constantly practicing. Helping visitors to the Family History Society Center helps learning about other parts. Been dealing with South Wales and Cornwall recently, where none of my lot were. So I practice a lot too, actually, and I think this discussion is helpful, but also very eye opening in a way, right? We all see it's very clear to me, at least from your comments. We all see practice in kind of the same way. It's the idea of taking a new to us tree and saying, jump in and get started. But I think I want my practice to be a little bit more broad than that. So, like, for example, earlier this week, I was looking at some of the online courses around paleography, and there's all these, there's a couple of them that offer, kind of your own pace workbook style, like worksheets. And you can download those or you can do them online and you can actually sit and practice interpreting the handwriting and various styles from various different documents. I definitely think that something like that would be beneficial for me. And that is a part of my education plan, but it's also an opportunity for me to practice the skills of paleography really intentionally, right? So, absolutely agree that taking someone else's random tree and diving in is a great way to practice our skills. But I think there are a lot of other opportunities out there to practice very specific areas of our skill set. For me, another way to do that beyond kind of some of those structured courses is to actually sit down and think about um, and make time for, I suppose, the idea of understanding legal documents. Right, in the U.S., we use a lot of land and property records, for example, in our research. But everybody has, probates and deeds and all sorts of things that are filled with legal jargon, and it's up to us to understand what is the legal jargon and interpret that kind of boilerplate language versus interpreting what is actually the valuable individual unique information that document is offering us. I think that practicing through transcribing a number of those deeds that I have in my files that I've not bothered to transcribe, well, not bothered, I haven't made time to transcribe those yet. That's a way that I can very intentionally practice both transcription of a legal document, which is important, but also interpretation of a legal document and being able to really much more efficiently be able to say that's boilerplate and that's actually unique language that I need to look at and study and understand what it means and how it applies to my ancestors. So for me, I see a couple of different paths, right? I see this idea of just taking a tree that I'm unfamiliar with and jumping in. I do that almost every day now, actually, in my position for Find My Past. I want to be very intentional about some of the skills that I need to get better at, right? Like paleography. I'm okay with paleography, but I'm not as quick as I would probably like to be. So that's something that I can be very intentional about practicing that skill. Um, Okay, so let's go back to a couple of your comments to see. Um, so here's a good suggestion from Lynn, actually saying, kind of along the same things that you guys have all been saying, like doing the research, but also taking courses through the National Institute of Geological Studies. Yeah, I've taken a couple of their programs as well. I find them to be quite good. I've actually written a couple of courses for them also, so I am biased for sure, but a good program and one that it has been around for a long time. They've got a lot of content to work through and a lot of opportunity in terms of different themes and different topics that you can work through. Um, Another one from Anya. Thank you. It's well worth looking to see what conferences are coming up. Absolutely. Find My Past videos are great every week, but it's worth looking at Roots Tech and other conferences where they cover a whole range of topics that you can then put into practice. I totally agree, right? Take that education that we've all been, we're so lucky in this part of the world of and the history of family history that we have access to more educational opportunities than ever before. If you just looking at YouTube or Roots Tech or some of these big video libraries, we have this huge amount of information available to us. We could spend more time educating ourselves than we would actually researching. So it's exciting to be a part of that, but it's also like a bit overwhelming. So I think it is important, and I agree with Anya here that it's worth taking our time to dig through those and figure out and watching sessions and then saying, right, my next 2 hours after I watch that YouTube video, I'm just going to be trying to do what they taught me in that 30-minute video, right? So actually scheduling the time for ourselves to say, I'm going to learn about X and then I'm going to do X. Whether it's related to my family tree immediately or not, just so that it's gets in your head, right? And it becomes a skill set rather than just something you heard about or something you learned about. Okay. Still scrolling through your comments. Yeah, Karen's saying I struggle with paleography. I know it's almost like every document is different. Like the handwriting. Oh, and Shirley actually adding to the paleography discussion, wonderful fun, right? The things you can discover from old wheels. I totally agree. When I'm doing it, I'm like, ooh, it's like decoding a coded message, right? Almost like putting yourself in like that game of trying to play with it. Um, and yeah, I love it. I enjoy doing it. I just want to be better at it. And actually, Karen gave us the link to one of the courses that I was referring to, actually. The National Archives does a paleography program and it's readily available. So thanks for sharing that, Karen. I didn't have the link handy. I probably should have. I found actually 4 or 5, I think. Let's see, National Archives and then. See, now I don't remember. But there were a couple from different universities and all sorts of different programs. So really, really great resources for that. So that's what I'm thinking about when I think about how to be more intentional with my practice of genealogy skills. Okay, so with that in mind, that idea of practicing in mind, I want to give us a few minutes for our back to basics today. So let me take this off and I'll put this one on. Because today I wanted to work through a little, and then if I'm sure we'll have time, so we'll come back to some of your other comments. So keep them coming. Don't stop chatting. Um, yeah, keep those comments going. But I want to work through some of the ways that you can use. Dun, dun, dun. You can use the optional keywords box on the family search on the Fund My Past website. All right, so I set up a number of examples, and I think some people kind of see this optional keywords as a really powerful tool, and I think some people just don't know what to do with it. And that's just my own impression. I don't really know if that's true or not, but that's how it comes across when I'm talking to people. Is that optional keywords box, and I'm talking about down here at the bottom of the search screen, right? You have this optional keywords down here and you see it often on the Find My Past site. But there's a lot of people, I think, who are just kind of, what is that? What does it do? What is it for? So let's work through that a little bit. I'm going to start though by taking this logo off the screen. There we go. So you can see the whole thing a little bit better. All right. So optional keywords can be used across the Find My Past site in a huge number of ways. Almost all of our collections have an optional keyword search box, although that's not a guarantee. Not all of them do, but the vast majority do. And again, I think there's a lot of people who really are not totally sure what it's for. So it's really for anything. You can use it for names, for locations, for topics, for occupations. You can use it for just about any word you can think of, and it may or may not pick up. It depends on how each collection was actually transcribed or indexed and how in depth that index processing or that transcription process was. But it will pick up a lot of information. And Ellie's saying addresses. Yes, you can use it for addresses as well. Love that. So thank you very much for that suggestion, Ellie. But let's look at a couple of examples here so you can kind of see really kind of there's a huge broad scope with this optional keywords box. So I am just I'm just on the main search page. It's just automatically on Britain. I'm going to leave it there for most of these examples. But just, keep in mind that it is available across all territories. Okay, so the first example I'm going to look for, I'm going to do something kind of we're going to start with some of the random ones, and we're going to narrow down to some of the probably the most common ones. So let's start with the word gypsy. I have a family story that relates to this tribe of gypsies or tribe of Romanies in Ohio. And one of the ways in which I found more information about them was by using this optional keywords box. Um, so I'm just going to type in. So you see, this is the only thing I'm looking for, right? My search right now is just completely blank except for this word, and I've got 8,600 results. I'm going to go ahead and click on that because I want to see what those results look like, and I want to be able to narrow my results down step by step, right? I start broad and I go into this kind of funnel situation where I'm looking for more pertinent information. So I looked at a few of these examples, and a lot of them are. First thing I noticed actually was how many of them are so recent, right? 2009, 1978, 64. That's not really the time period I'm interested in, and it's not really getting me to what I want. So what I actually am going to do is use all these filters on the left hand side of the screen to help narrow down my results. And I'm going to start actually by going to institutions and organizations. You see here there's a 23 in brackets or in parentheses. That does indicate that there are 23 results in that category. And then from here, I find a bit more of the time frame I'm looking for or interested in, right? We go back from 1757 up through to about 1921 with the Police Gazette of 1921, but most of these are from the 1800s. And just out of interest and curiosity to see kind of the different results that you can get back, we're going to look at this George or Charles Lamburn or Lambert character. He's in the England and Wales Crime, Prisons, and Punishment collection out of Great Britain, and we're just going to go straight to the image for the to kind of stay on time here because we only have so much time together. And of course, it's going to take a second. So in the meantime, because it's a live demo, Janet's suggesting use the keyword box for regiments and army numbers too in the military records. Absolutely. That is not one of the examples I prepped for today, but it is definitely a one that you want to use when you're in military records. And also look at using the British Army service number if you have it. There's a special search box for that as well, but definitely use it for regiments and army numbers in the military records for sure. Okay, so here's our record. Beautiful document. Actually, I looked at this yesterday, so I kind of know where he is. He's here down at the bottom. And here's our George Lamburn guy with his alias listed underneath. He's 52 years old. He's in the court system because he stole 2 horses. And then as you scroll over, it says his character is bad. These records are so cool. You get through this whole description of him and all of this other information. And then finally here towards the end, it's his occupation. And it's listed as hawker as a gypsy. Right? So that picked up from that that extra search box, right? That keyword search, it picked up this occupation. And then we learn all sorts of information about him, right? There's all sorts of stuff in these files, but that's where that gypsy term comes from. So would it have been picked up in an occupation search? Yeah, possibly, if that's one of the search fields that exists across that category of records. In this case, I didn't search by occupation, and I would note that the criminal records I don't think has an occupation search box. So instead of using an occupation search box, you use that optional keywords, and that's where you kind of pump in this type of information to find those little interesting tidbits. Okay, so one of the other things I wanted to look for um, y- was common surnames, or rather uncommon surnames. Sorry. I'm going to go back to my search all records, and I'm going to actually look for one of my ancestral names and give you a bit of an example. Now, in the United States, the surname, my mother's maiden name, actually is quite uncommon. There's less than 100 notices of it. There's less than 100 people with that surname, and we're all related, uh, every single one of us. So I am going to put in the optional keywords box, I'm going to put that name, and it's pronounced Hurton in my family, although it's other branches of the family pronounce it differently. Heerten. So it is quite different. It's German in origin. Um, and I'm going to show you what this kind of looks like, right? So if I use it as an optional keyword in Britain, I get 17 results. But look at this. If I use it as a last name search, I only get 13 results. So there are at least 4 entries where the name is referenced in, or the word Hurton is referenced in some other location of a record that's not listed as a surname, right? So let's go back, or categorized as a surname. Let's go back to our optional keywords and let's do it this way. So let's look at the surname from the optional keywords instead of the name search. And in this case, it's going to pop up. Of course, there's not a lot of results, right? And I wouldn't expect very many. 17 is actually more than I thought I was going to get, to be really blatant, because most of these folks came from Germany directly to the United States. And if they didn't do that migration, then they're still in Germany. So I wouldn't expect a lot of records on the Find My Past site with this name, which is one of the reasons why I like to use it as a test, right? Because it's pretty uncommon. So I see what I expect to see. I actually get some U.S. material in here, right? The World War II Allies collection is technically a British collection, but it includes people from the U.S. So Arthur Hurton, that's my grandfather, actually, or no, my great uncle. Gosh. Oops. But most of these folks I can, except for these really early ones, most of these guys I can identify and know who they are. And then you get down to the end of the list where, remember, we said they're not classified as a surname for some reason, right? The record, the name search is about the person on the record, and these are for a Mary Nixon, a Daniel Thomas, and then this gal here whose name I'm not going to try to pronounce. We're just going to refer to her as Maria. That seems to be her middle name. And actually, she's in the 1921 census. So I wanted to take a look at her and see where Hurton comes into play, right? Um, because beyond the context of having it in front of me as an American surname or German American surname, I don't really know much about the word itself. So if we zoom in on her, and I think she was, let's see, yep, there she is. Right there in the middle. We're in some kind of a, and I didn't look it up, I'm going to be honest. We're in a religious census. So this is some kind of religious body or house. They all have, as you can see, a religious relationship to the head of household. So here's Maria here. She's 42 years old and she's from Holland, and she identifies her location of birth as Hurton, Holland. And I'm sure they pronounce it differently in Holland. Absolutely positive of it. But that's the reference, right? So that's why it picked up in that other keyword. It picked it up as a location instead of as a name. So a couple different variations already on how to use that other keyword search box. And I could go through, I actually have quite a list of examples prepared. Another one that I used was Mason, right? The word Mason. Looking in the guild and trade associations, you find a number of examples where you would expect to see Freemasons, right? But there was one in particular. I found an entry for an individual who listed their father on the record, and the father was a Mason, a stone mason, but the record actually indicated that he was already deceased. Another one of my favorite things to search for, especially in that kind of optional keyword box, and I'm again going to go back to the main search page here to do this, is the town in which I grew up. Because it's small, there's only one of them in the world, and it just always makes for a good test, right? If I want to challenge a record set and say, oh, a record set that just covers everything, I always check against this town, because there's not a lot of records out there for it because it is so small and so unique. So for this one, I'm actually going to change my search to the world because I know there's not going to be a lot of English records for this small town in the state of Washington State, right? So I'm going to type in the name of the town in my optional keywords box. The name of the town is Enumclaw. Some of you in Washington may be familiar with that. Um, if you're watching today, I know we've had a few of you, and I actually got a whole lot more than I expected, 17,000 results. But when you think about it, that's all of the entries from the US Census collection, specifically, right? So it would have been in probably 1900 through the 1950 US Census material. So that actually makes sense. Um, so we're going to go ahead and click on those 17,000 results. Actually, I should have taken a step back. I should have waited on that. Okay, but we can use this search screen here. So the surname that from my family that is most prevalent in the town of Enumclaw is Brown. And as you can imagine, searching for a very common surname like Brown becomes a little bit easier when you add in this very unusual element of the location, right? So let's see what happens when when I search for Browns in the records, right? So I type in my last name. I had 17,000 results, almost 17,300. I now have only 48, and that is much more manageable. So the combination of the optional keyword plus the surname in this instance is really helpful for me. And again, we're going to see a lot of census entries and more modern records of that nature, which makes sense in terms of the search that we're building. We also have entries from the United States obituary notices, which is actually, there's a couple of people from my family in here. So this is actually my grandmother here, Elsie, and my grandfather is actually later in the list as well, and so forth, right? So you see then that you can narrow down your results pretty well by using kind of that optional keyword box in addition to something else like a surname or a year, for example, or even adding a location, right? And I didn't test this. I wonder what would happen if I put in a location. It doesn't like US locations as much, but it does narrow it down a little bit. I get 44 results, which makes sense because the town of Enumclaw is in Washington. So most of these should be from Washington. And then, of course, you can narrow down even further by category. We've got 26 records of BMDs and parish records, and then 22 from census land and surveys from Enumclaw with the last name Brown. So that all makes sense, actually. So hopefully the walkthrough here has been helpful a little bit. That optional keyword search box can be really, really useful and actually a pretty powerful tool. So if you are struggling with a common name, if you are struggling by finding a name that is often misspelled or spelled in different ways. Brown can be spelled in a number of different ways. So I will often type that surname into that optional keyword box, a number of different combinations to see what happens because you might get different results than if you use the name variants or if you use wildcards or if you actually use wildcards in the optional keyword box. Think about that for a second, blow your mind, right? Um, there's lots of different ways to use that optional keyword box. So play around with that. And maybe that is what you practice today, right? Just go on to any of the search screens that you like, whether it's all records or a particular category, or maybe it's even the 1921 census, and just dive into anything you can think of, right? Any word that you can think of that might pop up in a historical record. I love just kind of experimenting with that. And I've done that a lot actually in the 1921 census in particular because we transcribed every word we could find on the page. It's a great one to experiment with because so much was captured in the transcription process that you're not missing anything, right? You can search for anything. It's great. I love it. Thousands of different search combinations. Oh, yes, Claire. She knows my pain. I have the joys of researching the Brown family from Ireland with common first names as well. Good luck, Claire. I got nothing but sympathies for those of us with common names, and probably all of us have them somewhere in our tree. But yeah, brown has been a tough one for sure for me. Anya says, another example with military records. I've tried using it for military records in the past and struggled to get anything. But when I didn't add in the regiment came up. Or the record came up, sorry. Good for military numbers. And not necessarily that you did anything wrong, Anya, just the way the system interpreted your search was not the way you intended for that to happen. So I would just encourage you in those situations to just keep experimenting, right? Maybe it's not the regiment number that was transcribed or indexed. Maybe it's the date that works better in conjunction with that optional keyword search. So keep tackling it, because you'll get there in the end. But remember that we're smarter than the computer, right? And the computer's trying to interpret what we have in our brains, and sometimes it doesn't work out that great, especially on the first try, right? So the more we learn about how the computer functions and how the website functions, the better our brains can tell the computer what to do. um, so yeah, it's all about being smarter than the computer, right? And the computer trying to figure out how we got to the search that we got to. Okay, I'm going to go back to a couple of your questions from question of the week. I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover. Mental health awareness. Yep. Oh, don't forget to share that post about our partnership with Savu and the mental health awareness campaign for the Mental Health Foundation, and play with your new records. But let's go. Let's see. We've just got a few minutes left. So let's look at a few more of your comments about practicing your genealogy skills. Jillian says, I get together with a few friends from time to time to talk about ancestors that served in the military and where to find records. Occasionally come across photos of the ancestors in military uniform, which is fabulous. Absolutely. And I think, and so two comments actually. Getting together with friends is a great way to do this. I feel like my camera got really fuzzy and blurry, and so I'm trying to make it focus by moving a lot, but it's not working. Okay, getting together with friends and just sitting around a table and going, "Here's my brick wall. And what have you thought of that I haven't thought of?" Um, is really helpful. I love that. And of course, because of the pandemic, that's been limited, but we can do it virtually as well as actually sitting around a table, although I prefer to do it in person if I can. So think about that, right? Who are the people that are immediately around you you know, within easy access, that you can just sit down and just have a cuppa and talk about whichever research problem. It works your brain and it works theirs too, and then it benefits, and then you just take turns around the group. I love doing stuff like that. I think it's great. Sally adds to the question of the week discussion. Oh, actually, and sorry, this is a random question for the group, actually. So I don't know if people have responded to this, but hopefully they have. I was looking at my tree the other day, and I think I have some kind of floating people. When I type their name into the search, their name comes up twice. One of the entries has all the info I have found, and the other has scant info. What's happened? Can I delete the ones with scant info? Um, I would take that on a case by case basis if it were me and my tree. So if you're struggling with this, Sally, I would say try to make sure first that you're not losing any information. But once you've done that, once you've made sure that the primary entry has all of the data in it, then I would say I'd be very comfortable deleting that duplicate. And there, my camera just focused. Thank goodness. It was so fuzzy. Um, it was really bothering me. But if you're not sure, know that you can always reach out to us as well if you need a little help with your tree and making sure that you get all of that information across, and that you're not losing anything if you delete somebody. So contact us at support@findmypast.com to just have a look under the hood, if you will, and make sure that tree, that person in the tree, that floating person is actually a floater, and there's not something else going on there. We would love the chance to be able to help you with that and make sure that your tree is displaying accurately and correctly. So feel free to email us with those situations as well. Okay. Oh, Karen shared another resource on paleography. You can practice your Scottish writing. ScottishHandwriting.com. That's a new one to me, so I'm definitely going to check it out. In fact, I'm gonna make a note of it actually as I talk. So can I write and talk at the same time? That's really the question. Scottish handwriting .com. Perfect. I've got it. Okay. So thank you for that, Karen, as always. And Roxanne adding, I took a Google for genealogy class, um, which sounds great. That's always a good thing to know how our search engines work, whether that search engine is attached to a site like Find My Past or if it is just a generic search engine like Google. It's important we understand how the tools that we use work. She also says RootsTech sessions are great, and I'm taking certificate classes for genealogy. So kind of forced to practice and learn new skills by default. Yeah, taking a class is actually a really good way to kind of initiate this um, as an intentional practice, right? As an intentional step in our in how we make time for our research, and really being intentional about it. And once you take the class and you kind of develop those habits, and of course just carry them forward, right, and keep going. Um, Andrew says paleography can be painful when the source is in Latin. Yes. Yes, it can be. Have managed okay with late secretary hand. Yeah, it's not easy, and there's guidebooks, right? I have a number of them on my shelves actually, and as we talked about before, there's online kind of worksheets and things that you can download, print, practice on. But yeah, it does take some real dedication. Um, yeah, so great. So some really good comments and suggestions. I hope that you guys have started thinking a little bit about how to kind of broaden your own practice and your own skill set, right? Because I think somebody said something the other day that struck me that you can't be an expert at everything, and not everybody has a niche. But I actually disagree. I think everybody does. Their niche is their own family tree, right? I am the expert at my family tree. No one knows more about my genealogy than I do. Um, and I would say that's probably true for each of us. And so as our expertise in our own families advances and expands, we need to practice these other new skills that come in, because at some point they're going to be fed into us, right? At one point in my life, I spent a lot of time learning how to read meteorological maps, weather maps, because my ancestors homesteaded and weather impacted them intensely, right? Just like it does today, but in a much different way, right? Natural disasters, hurricanes and tornadoes, and whatever else, earthquakes. I have a lot of people in my family tree who live in earthquake areas. So how did that impact them from a historical standpoint? I needed to be able to read the weather maps so that I knew which way the tornado was traveling, so that I could see if it hit my ancestors' land or not. That's the type of thing that we start to learn about in this world of family history, right? We expand into all these different areas of science and academia. And so sitting down and being intentional about practicing those skills, like how to read a weather map, is something that we can all incorporate into kind of our usual research, right? um, so we all have our niche, and we all have a lot to share with each other, and a lot to discuss as a group. We have so much we can learn from each other, but being very intentional about practicing those skills can really add to that kind of conglomerate knowledge, which is really always fun. Ellen shares that she's working with her husband. His strength is kind of dogged research, right? And mine is interpreting writing. So it's been great to work together. That's awesome. I love that you're collaborating together in the same household. I wish I had someone to do that with. Um, Daphne, this is a good suggestion. This is great. I think I might just find a war memorial, pick a name, and research that person. It will switch your mind away from your own tree. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, sometimes I actually just do random searches in the Find My Past collection and just go, "Oh, that record's interesting." Like the crime record that I showed you earlier about the guy who stole the two horses that was referred to as a gypsy. I'll probably keep going on him just to see what happens, right? Like, I don't know that I have a lot of research experience in that particular part of the world, and I don't have as much research experience with the criminal records that I would like to have. I usually rely on some of my colleagues for that, because we have a crime specialist on the team. But it's an area that I could expand on. So I'll probably pick him and just see what I can find, right? And just throw it up there and see what happens. So I think that's a great idea. Okay, let's see. couple last comments. Um, oh, and Anya's got another suggestion for us. Wayne Shepherd is very good with presentations on Mother Nature and family history. Yeah, I've looked at some of his stuff before as well. I think it's a fascinating area. Um, and certainly, every part of the world has their own unique situation with weather, but in the United States, right, such a big country. Australia's the same way, that the weather patterns are so different in each different region. So if you are kind of a stereotypical person with a, immigrant background like I am, I have people that lived in just about every corner of the country, and you have to know a little bit about each part of that of the area. So it's always good to learn. I think historic weather information is fascinating. Okay. So with that, I think that brings us to just about the end of the comments. Um, I don't. Oh, this is a good one. Sue, yeah, let's end with this. I'm working with a group of DNA cousins from across the world sharing research. I think that's great. You find a bunch of people that you're related to, and in many cases maybe don't even know how you're related because of that DNA connection, and you build a little team, if you will, to collaborate with each other. I think that's a fabulous idea. Sue, thanks for sharing that. All right, I think that brings us to the end. Thank you all very much for spending your hour with me. I always appreciate it. And we always hope that you have a wonderful weekend exploring some new records on Find My Past, digging into your family tree, your family history, but also kind of just getting out there in the community and being a part of our family history family, our Find My Past family. We love it. Um, so next week, of course, another wonderful couple of sessions. We'll have our new records on Friday. As always, make sure you're signed up on our email list if you want access to those. Watch our blog for information about those. Download the app and go out and explore some cemeteries and see what you can do with our app. It's pretty cool. We're trying to transcribe the headstones for you. That's always good fun. And of course, if you come up with anything amazing, send us an email and let us know. We would love to hear your stories. We really mean that. So send us your stories and your ideas and your successes at discoveries@findmypast.com. We would love to hear what you have learned and what you've discovered about your family history. So, if you find something cool today or this weekend, or you go out and do something family history related, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. So, discoveries@findmypast.com. Right. With that, thank you all very much. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we will see you next week.